Tuesday, March 29th, 2022, and let's talk about The View for a second. They start up again talking about Will Smith. I don't want to keep talking about Will Smith. We need to be moving on to the January 6th commission, the Supreme Court justice who should be resigning, Ukraine. There's other things that, we don't need to drag this one out. But they do want to, Will Smith apologized. We're going to go on for a second about this though. And, they're trying to say that they, accept his apology and, let's not cancel him. Let's hold him accountable and there should be consequences, blah, blah, blah. Joy did this whole thing about, where the smack came from and, what Will's mindset might be like, and, coming from an abusive family. What no one's talking about is he's a Scientologist. They teach this, that slapping and smacking is actually a way to show your dominance over someone else, whether it's an aggressor or someone that you want to be able to control, meaning also a member of your own family. It's a practiced form of abuse. They actually teach it in classes, and I'm sure that Will had to go through them. So, we can't really deny his religious affiliation in any of this, which also holds a bit of a stranglehold. It could help explain why, people stood up for him, because that religion, which is a cult, it has a huge influence over Hollywood, in case you haven't noticed. Tom Cruise. And I do agree with this week's Black Megan that he should have been removed from the auditorium and not allowed back in, so that when his name was called, he missed that moment. I think that he should not have been able to take the stage again, and to miss that moment, I think actually would make people feel a little bit better about some accountability for his action. But to leave him in the room, to let him, laugh off what happened is pretty poor. So I don't agree with Whoopi that that would have caused more trouble. And it's not, why are we removing the Black man? It's, well, we're removing a person who assaulted another person on stage. I think people are smart enough to get that. I do know, and I've heard a lot of people say, people of color saying, when something like this happens, white people don't have to worry about it reflecting on their entire race. And that is 100% true. That moments like this can be used as to further racial discord. So I understand that argument. But there does need to be some sort of consequence. They didn't remove him from the room, but he shouldn't just, get off scot-free for having assaulted someone. And then finally, when Senator Cory Booker comes on, Joy asks about Ginny Thomas and the January 6th Commission, and that they are looking at questioning Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, about her role in planning the January 6th terrorist attack on the Capitol, which they should do. Booker explains how lax the ethics rules are for the Supreme Court. He's under no obligation to do anything. But what he is under an obligation to do is, on his disclosure forms, disclose her income. He said none. He said she doesn't have an income. She's made over $650,000 from, right-wing extremist groups that he didn't disclose, which to me is a violation. He is required to recuse himself from cases where there could be perceived impartiality, or perceived partiality, right? Or he wouldn't be able to be impartial, which he didn't do. So there are things that he has done that go against the rules, and AOC is starting to float on Twitter about the tools that Congress has at hand to show some accountability, i.e., impeaching him, using the example that, you know, the conservative part of the Democratic Party didn't even want to impeach Trump over the Ukraine scandal. Ultimately, they did, and she's like, "How dumb would we look if we had just let him get away with that?" Instead, now we can say, "Hey, we did our job. The Senate didn't," and she's right about that. You know, trying to make the point that what seems like a short-term political move, which isn't the right thing to do, ends up being the right thing to do in the long run. So, and publicly perceived that way. So she's got a point there. And speaking of the Ukraine, you know, quid pro quo that got the last administrator, the last president impeached for the first time. His chief of staff, Mulvaney, is it Mark Mulvaney, was just hired by CBS News as an analyst. So today's award for being the worst goes to CBS News for hiring a Trump apologist employee as part of their commenting panel. Yet another example. You cannot tell me that mainstream media has a liberal bias when they are touting out guys like this, who in his analysis of Biden's proposed tax plan was completely made up, just throwing out ideas that aren't on the proposal to effectively scare people. So, and I know The View will never say, you know, CBS News fucked it up, but they should. And Clarence Thomas should be impeached.